Down on the floor on her knees, Imani Hay works the same 6 feet she works last every night. She could clean them first. It would make more sense. They are near the door she leaves by, but she saves them. She does the rest of the room, the long carpets, the spills, the dropped chips no one came back for. And then she comes here to table 7, and she cleans this 1 square of floor slow. Like it matters. Like something happened here that the floor still remembers. Her mop moves in small, even strokes. She has done this for 5 years. Her hands know the weight of the handle the way some people know a name. $9 an hour. The math of it lives in her wrists. In the front pocket of her apron there is a casino chip. It is folded. You are not supposed to be able to fold a chip, and this one is bent almost in half, the edge worn soft from a thumb that has pressed it 1,000 times. It is not worth anything at the cage. She has never tried to cash it. She keeps it because of who folded it, and she does not talk about that. She wipes the 6 feet of floor by table 7. And tonight, kneeling there in the quiet, with the machine singing to nobody, and the light too bright, and the hour too late, Imani begins to cry. Not loud. There is nothing loud in her. She cries the way people cry when they have taught themselves not to. No shaking, no sound, just water moving down a face that stays still while the hands keep working because the hands do not know how to stop. She does not wipe her eyes. Wiping her eyes would mean admitting there was something to wipe. So she lets it fall, and she keeps cleaning. And if you had walked past, you would have seen a woman mopping a floor and nothing else. That is the whole trick of a person like Imani. You can look right at her and see a job. You can look right at her and miss the entire life. She had learned that a long time ago, how to be a uniform, how to be a task somebody scheduled, how to be the thing that makes a room clean and never the thing a room notices. Across the floor, near the high-limit tables, a man had been standing for a while without moving. He had a drink he had not touched. He had won more money that night than most people in that building would earn in 10 years, and he had felt none of it. He was the kind of man rooms rearranged themselves around, and for a reason he could not have explained if you had asked him he had not left. He was watching the woman by table 7. He did not know her name. He did not know why she saved that patch of floor for last, or what was folded in her apron, or that she went home to a life that had been quietly taken apart one piece at a time. He did not know any of it yet. He only knew that she was crying, and that she did not want anyone to see, and that she was cleaning the floor anyway. Leonard Harris was a man who had spent 30 years learning how to look away from exactly this, from the people at the edges, from the ones who kept the lights clean. Tonight, for the first time in longer than he could remember, he did not look away. There is a world inside a casino that the players never meet. It runs at night on the far side of the noise, and it is held together by people you are trained not to see. They call themselves the 4 a.m. crew, cleaners, cage runners near shift change. One old security guard named Otis Whitfield, who has worked this floor longer than most of the dealers have been alive. They pass each other in the same hour every night, and they have their own way of saying hello. It is not hello. Otis would see Imani come in, and he would say, "Made it to morning." And Imani would say, "Made it to morning." That was the whole exchange. But it meant more than it said. In a place like that, at an hour like that, getting to morning is not a small thing. It is the thing. You show up. You clock in. You survive the night on your feet. And the reward is that the sky eventually turns gray outside a building with no windows and somebody lets you leave. Because a casino is built to make you forget there is a morning at all. Think about the last time you were in one. There are no clocks, not one anywhere. There are no windows, so the light never changes, so your body never learns that hours are passing. The carpets are loud and busy, on purpose patterns that pull your eyes down and keep them moving, never letting them rest. There are no straight lines to the exit. You cannot walk out in a hurry, because the building will not let you find the door. The old-timers on the crew have a joke about the air. They say they pump extra oxygen in at night to keep the gamblers awake. It is not true. But they say it because it is easier to laugh about the machine than to say the real thing out loud, which is that the whole place is a machine, and the machine is very good at what it does, and what it does is eat time, yours, your paycheck, your Tuesday. The years you meant to spend somewhere else. The players sit inside that machine and slowly disappear into it, and the crew walks through it, cleaning up what it leaves behind invisible on purpose, keeping the whole beautiful trap gleaming for the next person who wanders in. One of them was young. Her name was Deja Monroe. 22 years old, a baby at home working the overnight because overnight paid a little more and daycare was cheaper for the hours she was gone. She was new. She still flinched when a pit boss walked by. She had not yet learned how to be furniture. Imani watched out for her, slipped her the easier sections, told her which supervisors to avoid and which ones just talked big. Deja did not know it yet, but she had walked into the orbit of the one person on that floor who had decided a long time ago that nobody on her crew was going to be invisible to her, even if they were invisible to everyone else. Made it to morning, Otis would ask. Made it to morning, they would answer. And the machine would keep singing, and the night would keep going, and somewhere out past the walls the real world kept turning without any of them. Leonard Harris was worth a little over $2 billion, and he had built almost none of it from anything soft. He came up with nothing. Less than nothing. He knew what it was to sleep 4 to a room and count the change in a coffee can and watch his mother work 2 jobs and still come up short at the end of the month. He remembered being a boy who was hungry in a specific, boring, everyday way that people who have never been poor do not understand. He remembered swearing he would never feel it again. And he never did. He was smart, and he was relentless, and the world turned out to reward relentless. He built companies. He bought companies. He learned that money was just a way of keeping score, and he was very, very good at the score. By 58, he had everything the boy in that room had sworn he would get, and he felt nothing. That was the part nobody warned him about. He could buy any object in any room. He could not feel a single one of them. Food had no taste. Cars were just seats. Houses were square footage. He had spent his whole life climbing toward a feeling, and when he finally arrived, the feeling was not there. Just the climbing, echoing, with nothing left to climb, except the tables. That was the secret he did not say to anyone. He gambled enormous, sums that would make a normal man sick. And he did it not because he needed the money, and not because he thought he would win. He did it because it was the only thing left that made his heart move. When the cards turned, when the wheels slowed for 1/2 of 1 second, he felt alive. That was what he was buying at those tables. Not money, a pulse. He told himself it was control. He told himself a man like him did not have a problem, because a problem was something poor men had, and he was not poor anymore. Everything counted in Leonard's world. Everything was tracked. Nothing was wasted. Nothing except him. That night was worse than most, and he knew exactly why, even if he would not have said it. It was a date. An anniversary of a kind that has no cards or cake. Years ago on that day, he had said something to his son that a father should never say to a son. Vaughn had been young and asking for something Leonard did not know how to give, and Leonard had answered him the way he answered a bad investment, cleanly, coldly, final. Vaughn had not spoken to him since. Not one word in all those years. Leonard had more money than a small country, and he could not buy back a single sentence from his own child. So on that night every year he came here, to the tables, to the one place that could still make him feel something loud enough to drown out the thing he was trying not to feel. He would sit down, and he would play until the ache went quiet, and it never went quiet, and he would play more. He won $3 million that night. He remembered none of it. And when the floor finally emptied, when the last of the noise thinned out, and there was nowhere left to point the ache, he found himself standing at the rail with an untouched drink in his hand, looking at a woman on her knees cleaning 6 feet of floor, and crying without a sound. He recognized something in her. He could not have told you what, but it stopped him where he stood. He walked over. He should not have. Everything in his life had taught him to keep moving, to never stand in the mess, to let other people handle the floor. But he crossed the empty room, and he stopped a few feet from her, and he said the only thing he knew how to say, which was the wrong thing. "Are you all right?" Imani did not look up. Her mop did not stop. "I'm fine, sir. Almost done here. You're crying. It's late. Long shift." She wiped the same spot she had already cleaned. "You need something from the floor. I can come back." He heard the shape of it. The politeness that is really a door closing. He had used that voice himself 1,000 times on people he wanted gone. His hand moved toward his jacket, toward the inside pocket. It was a reflex older than thought. Something was wrong, so you paid for it, and it went away. That was how Leonard fixed the world. Imani saw the hand move. She knew that motion. She had seen it before from men who wanted to feel good about themselves for the price of a bill they would not miss. "Don't," she said, just that, quiet, not angry. But it landed like a wall. Leonard stopped. "I don't want your money," she said. She stood up now, slow her knees, telling on her, and she looked at him for the first time. "You keep it. That's yours. This," she touched the mop handle, "is mine. I earn it. $9 an hour. And it's mine, and it's enough." There was a small notebook sticking out of her apron pocket. Worn. Rubber-banded. He glanced at it without meaning, to the way you glance at anything you are not supposed to see. She noticed. She pushed it down out of sight with one thumb, casual final, the way you close a book you are not ready to read to anyone. "Have a good night, sir," she said. And Leonard Harris, who could buy the building they were standing in, stood there with his money in his pocket and nothing to say, and understood that he had just been turned down by the poorest person in the room. 12 years before that night on the casino floor, Imani Hay was a woman who slept easy. She and Cordell had a small house on the east side of town, 2 bedrooms, a porch that leaned a little to the left, a kitchen so narrow that if you both stood in it, one of you had to turn sideways to pass. They used to laugh about that. He would put his hands on her hips and steer her out of the way with a little spin every single time, like it was the funniest thing either of them had ever done. Cordell drove a delivery route. Up at 5, home by 6, the same roads every day, and he never once complained about it. He was the kind of man who whistled while he checked the oil, who fixed the neighbor's fence and would not take a dime for it, who kept a folding chair in the trunk of the car so that if he saw an old man waiting too long at a bus stop, he could pull over and give him somewhere to sit. He was good. That is the part that matters. That is the part people forget when they hear how this ends. Cordell Hay was a good man. They had one daughter, Nia. And the day she was born, Cordell cried harder than the baby did. He held her in that narrow kitchen, and he said out loud to a child who could not understand a word, "You are never going to want for anything. I promise you that." He meant it. That was the tragedy hiding inside the promise. He meant every word. They did not have much, but they had a system. Every Friday, Cordell handed Imani his check, and she ran the house on it like a captain runs a tight ship. There was a coffee can on top of the refrigerator, and every week a little went into it. Not much. $10. 15. If it was a good week. That can was going to send Nia to college. That was the plan. That was the whole plan, and it was a good one, and they were proud of it. On Sunday nights they cooked together in that kitchen, too small for 2 people. He chopped badly. She fixed what he ruined. Nia sat on the counter and stole pieces of whatever was going. And when it was done, they ate at a table with 3 chairs and one wobbly leg that Cordell always said he would fix and never did, because fixing it would have meant one Sunday without the joke about the wobbly leg. Imani did not know in those years that she was living inside the best part of her life. Nobody ever does. You only find out later, looking back, that the ordinary Tuesday was the treasure the whole time. She thought there would always be more of them. More narrow kitchens. More wobbly-legged tables. More Fridays with the coffee can. She thought the small good life they had built would just keep going the way you think your own heartbeat will keep going without ever having to think about it at all. Cordell used to stand on that leaning porch at night after Nia was asleep, and he would look out at the street and say the same thing. "We did all right, didn't we? We did all right." And Imani would lean into his shoulder and say, "We did all right." Neither of them knew there was a folded chip coming. Neither of them knew about the room with no clocks and no windows. Neither of them knew that a man builds a whole good life with his own 2 hands, brick by careful brick, and it can still come down in a single season through a door so small you would swear nothing bad could ever fit through it. But that came later. For now, hold them there, on the porch, in the light of the kitchen that was too small for 2. A good man, a steady woman, a coffee can full of Fridays, and a promise made to a newborn that the world had every intention of keeping, because you need to love them first. You need to know exactly what was standing there. so that later when it falls, you feel the size of what was lost. The door that took Cordell Hay down was not a big one. That is what nobody understands about this. It was small. It looked like nothing at all. It started with a work thing. A group of the guys from the depot drove out to one of the riverboat casinos on a Friday after shift. Cordell almost did not go. He was tired. He wanted his porch. But you go along because they are your guys, and you do not want to be the one who never comes. He put $20 into a machine planning to lose it and go home. And on the 8th pull, the machine lit up. $200. Here is the thing about that first win that you have to understand, because it is the whole trap in one moment. $200 was 10 weeks of the coffee can. 10 weeks of dimes and Fridays, and the machine handed it to him in 4 seconds for nothing out of the air. His whole body lit up with it, not greed, something older than greed. A feeling like the universe had finally noticed him and decided he was owed. He took the $200 home. He told Imani. They put it in the can. Everybody laughed. No harm done. But something had happened in his brain that neither of them could see. Because your brain does not actually chase winning. That is the part people get wrong. Your brain chases almost winning. The near miss, 2 cherries and a blank. The card that would have been perfect if it had come 1 spot sooner. Scientists have watched this happen on the scans. When a gambler almost wins, the same part of the brain lights up as when they actually win. The machine knows this. The machine is built on it. The reels are designed to land just above the line and just below it, over and over, whispering the same thing every time. So close. You were so close. Go again. Cordell went again the next Friday. He did not win. He went again. He did not win. And each time he did not win, the machine showed him how close he came, and each time it showed him, his brain filed it away, as almost, and almost is the most addictive word in the human language. Almost got it that time. Almost had it. One more. That is the whole staircase, and every step of it feels reasonable while you are standing on it. $20 is nothing. Then 20 is what you lost, so 40 makes it back. Then 40 is gone. So you need 80 to be even, and being even starts to feel like winning, and winning starts to feel like the only way out of a hole, that the winning is what dug. Imani noticed the coffee can was lighter before she noticed anything else. She asked him about it once, easy, no accusation. He said he had borrowed a little for gas. He would put it back, and he believed himself when he said it. That was the worst part. Cordell was not lying to her. He was lying to himself, and she was just standing close enough to catch the edge of it. Because a man like Cordell does not think he has a problem. Problems are for other people, weak people. He was strong, he was good, he was in control, and he could stop any Friday he wanted to. He just did not want to this Friday. Or the next one. The near miss is a beautiful, patient liar. It never tells you that you are losing. It only ever tells you that you are close. And a good man, a decent man, a man who cried when his daughter was born and kept a chair in his trunk for strangers, followed that whisper, one reasonable step at a time, all the way down, telling himself the entire way that the next pull was, the one that would carry him back up the stairs, and home. It never was. You want to know how a whole life comes apart. It does not come apart all at once. It comes apart the way Imani watched it come apart, which is slowly and then all together, and always one reasonable decision at a time. The coffee can went first. Then the account behind the coffee can. She started finding out about money, the way you find out a roof is leaking. Not from the sky, from the stains spreading across the ceiling. A shut-off notice in the mail for a bill she thought was paid. A card that got declined at the grocery store while Nia stood next to the cart. A second job Cordell took that somehow left them with less, not more. She tried talking to him. That was the first thing. Just talking gentle at the kitchen table, both hands flat on the wood. She said, "Honey, what is going on?" She said, "We can fix this, whatever it is, just tell me." And he would look at her with real love in his eyes and promise her it was handled. He was almost even. He had a plan. He just needed one more good night to set it all right. She tried the numbers. She sat him down with every bill spread out on the table, and she showed him in ink what was coming in and what was going out, and the gap between them that was swallowing their life. He nodded. He agreed with all of it. And that Friday, he went anyway. She tried anger. She yelled. She said things she did not mean and some things she did. It changed nothing. You cannot yell a person out of a fire that feels to them like the only warm thing left. She tried hiding the money. She opened an account he did not know about and moved a little into it every week. He found it. Not because he was cruel, because he was desperate, and desperate people become very good at finding money, and one bad night, the account she built to protect them became one more thing that fed the machine. She tried Nia. She thought, if he will not do it for me, he will do it for her, and for a while it worked. He would come to Nia's school things, and he would look at his daughter, and Imani would see the old Cordell surface for a whole evening. And then the pull would come back quiet in the middle of the night, and he would be gone again. Here is what nobody tells you about loving someone who is drowning like that. You cannot save them. You would give anything. You would give your own 2 hands, and it does not matter, because the person you are trying to reach is not the person standing in front of you anymore. The addiction wears his face. It uses his voice. It makes his promises in his voice with his love, and it breaks every one of them. And the whole time the people on the outside are asking you the cruelest question in the world. Why do you stay? As if it were simple. As if the man burning the house down were not also the man who cried when your daughter was born? As if you could just walk away from the wobbly-legged table and the leaning porch and the 12 good years and pretend the good years never happened because the bad ones came after. Imani stayed because she remembered. Somebody had to remember who he really was. Somebody had to hold the memory of the good man while the machine ate the rest of him, because if she let go of it too, then there would be no proof left anywhere in the world that Cordell Hay had ever been anything but this. So she held on. She worked more hours. She sold the car and bought a worse one. She paid what she could and juggled what she could not. She kept Nia fed and kept Nia in school and kept the lights on more nights than not, and she did it quietly without invoice, the way she would later clean 6 feet of floor. And every Friday she waited up, sitting at the table with the wobbly leg, one lamp on, listening for the sound of his key. Some nights he came home ashamed and empty and swearing this was the last time. And she believed him, every time. Not because she was foolish, because believing him was the last piece of the good life she had left, and she was not ready to put it down. 5 years ago, on a Tuesday in the fall, Cordell Hay walked into a casino for the last time. He did not tell Imani he was going. He had told her he was done. He had meant it the way he always meant it. But that afternoon a thing had happened. The bank had called. The house, the small house with the leaning porch, was 3 payments behind and sliding toward gone, and Cordell, who had spent 5 years believing the next good night would fix everything, decided that this was the night. This was the one. He would win it all back, save the house, walk in the door a hero, and never touch a card again. He took what was left. He took the money, set aside for Nia's tuition, the last protected thing, the thing he had sworn on his daughter's newborn head he would never touch. He told himself he was borrowing it. He told himself he would put it back by morning. He drove to the casino. He sat down at a blackjack table, table 7. He played careful at first. He was up a little. Then he was down. Then he did the thing that every one of them does at the end, the thing the machine has been patiently waiting 5 years for him to do. He stopped playing to win a little. He started playing to win everything. He pushed the whole stack out, all of it, the house, the tuition, the 12 good years folded into a pile of chips on a green table under a light too bright at an hour too late. The dealer turned the card. He lost. There was a moment, they say, when a man loses everything, that he goes very quiet. Cordell went very quiet. He looked at the empty space on the felt where his whole life had been sitting a second before. He did not yell. He did not beg. He reached down and picked up one chip, the last one, a single chip that had rolled back to him, not enough to matter, not enough to cash, not enough for anything. He folded it, bent it right in half between his thumb and his finger, which you are not supposed to be able to do, which takes a strength that only comes from somewhere past the end of hope. He folded it, and he put it in his pocket, and he stood up from table 7, and he walked out into the parking lot. His heart stopped before the ambulance got there. 51 years old, a delivery man who whistled while he checked the oil, who kept a chair in his trunk for strangers who cried the day his daughter was born. Gone in a parking lot under a sky he could not see, because a casino has no windows and he had lost track years ago of where the morning was. Otis found out weeks later from another cleaner that a man had died in that lot. He did not know the name. Nobody on the crew did. He was just a story, a thing that happens sometimes at a place like that. He never made it to morning. They gave Imani his things in a paper bag, his wallet empty, his keys, his wedding ring, and in the front pocket of his jacket one casino chip folded in half, worn soft now from the grip of a dying man's hand. She could not cash it. She never tried. It was the last thing his hands ever touched, and it was worthless, and it was the most valuable thing she owned. 2 years later, needing work, needing to be near him in a way she could not explain to anyone, she took a job cleaning floors at his casino. And every night when the room emptied out, she went to table 7, and she knelt down, and she cleaned the same 6 feet of floor where the last of him had slipped away. She saved it for last. Every night. Because some things you do not rush. After Cordell was gone, Imani did not fall apart. She wanted to. There is a version of this story where she does, and nobody would have blamed her for it. But she had a daughter, and grief is a luxury you cannot always afford. So she did the only thing she knew how to do with pain. She turned it into a system. It started at the public library. She did not have money for anything else, and the library was free, and it was warm, and it was quiet in a way her house was not anymore. She walked in one afternoon, not knowing what she was looking for, and she walked out with an armful of books about money. Not the fancy kind. Not the kind with a man in a suit on the cover promising you a yacht. The plain kind. The ones that explain in small words the thing that nobody had ever explained to her or to Cordell. How money actually works. Where it goes. How the people who have it hold on to it, and how the people who do not lose it one reasonable decision at a time. She read the way a drowning person swims. She read at the kitchen table, at the table with the wobbly leg in the same chair where she used to wait up for him. She read after her shifts with her feet aching and her eyes closing because she had decided something. She had decided that whatever it was that had reached into her home and taken her husband, she was going to understand it. She was never going to be its victim twice. And as she read, she started to write. She bought a notebook. Just a plain, 1.99 black cover, the kind a kid takes to school. And in it, she began to write down the rules. Not theories, not quotes from the books. Rules. Small, hard-tested things that she could actually live by. 1 to a page. In her own handwriting, in her own words, so that she would never be confused again about what she believed. Rule 1. Pay yourself first, even if it is $1. She wrote it at the top of the first page, and she underlined it twice. Over the months, the notebook filled. Rule after rule, page after page, each one paid for in something she had lost. The notebook became the most important thing she owned next to a folded chip in a jacket pocket. It went everywhere with her. It lived in the front pocket of her apron, right against her heart. And when a man on a casino floor once glanced at it, she pushed it out of sight, because it was not for him. It was hers. It was the map she had drawn herself out of the hole with. But here is the thing about that notebook, the thing that mattered most. There was one page she could not finish. Near the back, she had written 3 words at the top, and then nothing. Just the 3 words, and below them a whole blank page, white and waiting. The last rule. She knew what it was supposed to be about. She had known for years. It was not about money at all. The money rules had been the easy ones. This one was about the thing she still could not do, the thing all the library books in the world could not teach her, the thing she carried heavier than the chip and the notebook combined. She would sit with her pen over that page some nights, and she would not be able to write a single word, because the last rule was the one she had not learned yet, so she left it blank. And she kept it blank. And every time she flipped past it, that empty page asked her the same quiet question it had been asking for 5 years. What is the rule you still cannot write? If you ever met Imani, and you got her talking, and you were somebody she decided to trust, she might have shown you a few pages of that notebook. Not all of them, but a few. And they went something like this. Rule 1. Pay yourself first. Before the bills, before anybody else's hand is out, before you even sit down, you take something off the top and you put it somewhere you cannot easily reach it, even if it is $1. Because the habit is the thing. The amount comes later. The habit comes first. Rule 2. Build 1 month before you build anything else. 1 month of rent, 1 month of food, 1 month of the light staying on sitting in an account you do not touch. She called it her wall. Because before she had the wall, every small emergency was a catastrophe. A flat tire was a catastrophe. A sick day was a catastrophe. After the wall, a flat tire was just a flat tire. She wrote, "The difference between poor and broke is 1 month of rent in the bank. And most people never get to find that out." Rule 3. And she wrote this one hard enough to dent the page. Never borrow to chase a loss. Ever. The moment you are putting borrowed money on top of lost money to make yourself whole, you are already gone. That is not a bad night. That is the door. She did not explain that rule to most people. She did not have to explain it. She had watched it kill someone. Rule 4. Know the math they are hiding from you. Every machine in that casino, every table, every game, is built so that the house wins a little more than it loses. Not by luck, by design. By a number printed nowhere that guarantees that if you play long enough, you lose. It is not that you might lose. It is that the math will not let you win. The only winning move is the one they never advertise, which is the amount of time you spend not playing. She did not preach these rules. That was not her way. She lived them quietly, and now and then when the moment was right, she handed one to somebody who needed it. Like the night young Deja Monroe sat down on an overturned bucket in the supply room near tears because a payday loan she had taken to cover daycare had ballooned into something with teeth, and she did not understand how $20 had become $200. Imani sat down next to her. She did not lecture. She took out the notebook. She turned to a page, and she read it to her out loud, slow the way you would read a bedtime story to a scared child. Then she said, "You are not stupid, baby. Nobody ever taught you this. They do not teach it on purpose. Now you know it. Write it down in your own words, and it is yours." And Deja, 22 years old, wiped her face and asked Imani if she could borrow a pen. That was how the rules got passed on. Not from a stage, not from a book, from one tired woman on a bucket to another at 4 in the morning in a room with no windows where nobody important was ever going to look. There is a whole economy of people the world is built not to see. Imani had joined it, and then she had quietly become its heart. The overnight cleaning crew was maybe 6 people on a good night. They came in when the world was asleep, and they left before it woke up, and in between, they made a machine gleam for people who would never once wonder who did it. Nobody thanked them. Nobody learned their names. To most of that building, they were not people. They were a service that happened while nobody was watching. Craig Duvall was the pit boss on nights, and Craig was not a cruel man. That is what made him a useful thing to look at. He did not kick anybody. He did not yell. He simply did not see them. He would walk the floor talking on his phone and step right over a wet spot. Imani was cleaning without breaking stride, without a glance the way you step over a crack in the sidewalk. He once stood 2 feet from Deja for a full minute waiting on a text, and never registered that a human being was standing there. It was not hatred. Hatred would have meant he saw them first. It was something quieter and in its own way worse. To Craig, they simply were not there. They were furniture that moved. And here is what nobody in that building knew. While Craig looked through his crew, Imani looked at them. She knew that Otis's knees were bad and she took the far bathroom so he would not have to walk. She knew Deja had a baby and a payday loan and a look in her eye that Imani recognized from her own mirror. She knew which of them were one hard week from the street and which were already there sleeping in cars in the far corner of the lot. She saw all of them, every single one, because she had learned in the hardest way a person can learn it exactly what it costs to be a human being that nobody bothers to look at. That was the whole difference between Imani and Craig Duvall. He had power and no sight. She had no power at all. And she saw everything. There was a reason Imani took the 4 a.m. shift. It was not the money, though the overnight paid a little more. It was not even the table, though the table was part of it. It was Nia. Her daughter was 19 now, and she was in college. A real one with a campus and a library and a future attached to it. Nia was studying to be the thing her father never got to see her become, and every semester of it cost money that a woman who cleaned floors for $9 an hour did not on paper have. So Imani made it appear anyway. That was what the 4 a.m. shift was for. The extra dollars an hour, the overtime, the holidays, nobody else wanted. Every one of them went into an account with Nia's name on it. An account Imani protected the way you protect the last warm thing in a cold house. Because she had watched a tuition fund die on a blackjack table once, and she had sworn on the folded chip in her pocket that this one never would. Nia did not know the shift was for her. Not really. She knew her mother worked nights, and she knew her mother was tired, and there was a distance in it that neither of them had the words to close. Because when your mother is always working, you learn to read her love in the wrong language. You learn to hear the absence and miss the reason for it. They talked on the phone most days. Short calls. Nia between classes, Imani on a break in the supply room. And there was one call a week before that night on the floor that Imani kept replaying. Nia had called Rush cheerful a little far away. She was talking about a professor, a paper, a friend Imani had never met. And Imani, tired down to the bone, had gone quiet in the middle of it, just listening to her daughter's voice, so full of a future, so completely unaware of the 4 a.m. floors that were paying for it. And Nia had said, "Mom, you still there?" And Imani had said, "I'm here, baby. I'm always here." There had been a pause, a small one, the kind where something almost gets said. Nia had started to say something and stopped and said instead that she had to run. She was late, she loved her bye, and the line went quiet. Imani sat in the supply room with the phone still warm in her hand, and she did not know what her daughter had almost said. She would think about it for a long time. She just knew that everything she did, every floor, every night, every dollar was for the voice on the other end of that unfinished call. Here is the thing about Leonard Harris that nobody at those high tables would have guessed. He was sick with the same thing that killed Cordell Hay. Exactly the same thing. The only difference between them was the number of zeros. Cordell chased $200 because it was 10 weeks of a coffee can. Leonard chased $3 million because it was the only thing loud enough to reach him. Cordell told himself he could stop any Friday. Leonard told himself a man with $2 billion could not, by definition, have a problem. Cordell went back to feel like the universe finally owed him something. Leonard went back to feel anything at all. Same door, same whisper, same staircase. One man walked down it in work boots, and the other in shoes that cost more than Cordell made in a month, and the staircase did not care. It never does. The machine does not check your bank balance before it takes you. It only checks whether you keep coming back. And Leonard kept coming back. He would tell you, if he were honest, which he was not, that it started small too. A charity poker night years ago. A little thrill in a life that had gone flat. He had won that first time. They almost always win that first time. That is not luck. That is design. The house lets you taste it, so you will spend the rest of your life trying to taste it again. He chased that first taste for years. Bigger stakes, bigger rooms, private tables in cities where nobody knew him. And the strange, terrible truth was that the more he lost, the more alive he felt, because losing that much meant the game was finally real, and real was the one thing money had stopped being able to buy him. His people knew. His accountant knew. A man does not move sums like that without somebody noticing. But nobody says no to $2 billion. Nobody stages an intervention for the man who signs the checks. So, they looked away, the same way the whole world had always looked away from Leonard's mother, when she was the one cleaning floors, the same way Craig Duvall looked through his crew. Invisible works in both directions. The poor are invisible because nobody bothers to look. The powerful are invisible because nobody dares to. That night, the night he could not leave, had started worse than most. It was the anniversary of the thing with Vaughn. And Leonard had sat down at those tables not to win, and not even to feel alive. He had sat down to disappear. There is a kind of gambling that is not about hope at all. It is about punishment. It is a man putting everything on the felt because some quiet part of him wants to lose. It wants to be as empty on the outside as he already is on the inside, wants the numbers to finally match. That was where Leonard was that night. He had pushed out a stack that would have frightened a normal man, and he had felt for one clean second the sweet, terrible relief of not caring whether it came back. He was standing at the edge of that. And then the room had emptied, and the noise had thinned, and he had looked down and seen a woman on her knees, cleaning 6 feet of floor and crying without a sound. He did not know it yet, but he was looking at the far end of his own staircase. He was looking at what waits at the bottom for the people who love the man who cannot stop. He just did not know her name, not yet. He learned it 3 nights later, and the way he learned it took the floor out from under him. He had not been able to stay away. He told himself he was there to play. He was not there to play. He was there because a woman cleaning a floor had refused his money and then made him feel for the first time in years like a man who had been seen and found wanting. He wanted to understand that. Men like Leonard cannot stand a thing they do not understand. So he asked around, quietly the way he did everything. He learned that the cleaner who worked table 7 had a name Imani Haye, and that she had been there about 3 years, and that she was the widow of a man who had died in the parking lot one night, years back, a gambler, dropped everything at a blackjack table and walked out and never made it to his car. Leonard heard the story, the way you hear any small sad thing. And then the man telling it said the year, and the season, and a detail almost thrown away about the size of the final hand, a number that had gone around the floor as a kind of legend, the night some poor soul pushed his whole life out on one card and lost it. Leonard went very still, because he knew that hand. He had been there. He had been at that table, on that night, in that season, the year the man in the parking lot lost everything. He remembered it now, the way you remember something you spent years being careful not to remember. A crowded table, a man across the felt, with a look Leonard had seen before, the look of somebody betting past the edge of sense. Leonard had noticed him the way you notice weather. Distantly, without weight. They had played the same hand. And here is the part that a person could spend the rest of his life trying to make sense of. In a building that size, in a city that size, the same faces circle each other for years and never once truly meet. The winner never looks at the loser. Why would he? The loser is just the other side of the math. You take the chips, you tip the dealer, you go home feeling alive, and you never think about the shape sitting across from you, or where he goes when the table breaks, or whose father he was. Leonard had taken the chips that night. He had won. He had won, and he had felt that clean, bright second of being alive, and he had gathered up his winnings and gone home, and he had never once wondered about the man on the other side of the table, the delivery driver who whistled while he checked the oil, who kept a chair in his trunk for strangers, who had just pushed his daughter's whole future across the felt and lost it. Leonard had won that money. Some of it, maybe all of it, had come out of the pile that Cordell Hay pushed out on his last hand on this earth. He had won that night, and 2 years later, the man's widow had come to work at the very casino where it happened, and had knelt every night on the 6 feet of floor, where her husband slipped away, cleaning it slow, saving it for last, while the man who took last of him walked past on his way to the high tables, and never, not once, looked down. Leonard stood in the middle of that bright, humming, windowless room, a man worth $2 billion, and understood that he was not a stranger to her tragedy. He was standing in the middle of it. He had helped build it. There is a difference between not knowing a thing and refusing to see it, and Leonard Harris had spent his whole life on the wrong side of that line. He had never let himself see the faces on the other side of the table, never let himself wonder who they were, or what they were betting, or what breaks in a home when a man loses like that. He had never let himself see the people who cleaned the rooms he won in, the ones who wiped the felt and emptied the trays and made the whole bright trap gleam for the next man who wandered in. He had never let himself see his own mother, really see her in the years when she came home, smelling of other people's floors, too tired to eat. And he had promised himself the only sin was staying poor, when the real sin was learning to look away. He had never let himself see that the thing he called control in himself was the same thing he called weakness in men like Cordell. He had never let himself see that a chip is a chip, whether you fold it in half in a dying grip or stack it in a tower you do not even feel. He had never let himself see Vaughn's face on the day he broke it, because seeing it would have meant he had done something a father cannot take back. He had never let himself see any of it, not because he could not. Because seeing costs something, and Leonard had built a whole life around never paying that particular bill. And now, in one windowless room with the machine singing to nobody, all of it arrived at once. Every face he had refused to look at, waiting for him. He came back the next night, and he did not go near the tables. He found Imani in the far corner working a stretch of carpet, and he stood a respectful distance off the way you stand, near something you are afraid to frighten. He did not have a drink this time. He did not have his money out. He had his hands in his pockets, and a look on his face she had not seen on him before. "I'm not here to play," he said. Imani kept working. "Floor's not a good place to talk, sir. I've got a lot of it. I know about your husband." Her hands stopped. Just for a second. Then they started again slower. "A lot of people know about my husband," she said. "It was in the paper for a day." "I was there," Leonard said. She looked up. He made himself say it. All of it. The table, the night, the hand, the number that had gone around the floor like a legend. He told her he did not know back then that the man across the felt had a name or a wife or a daughter or a coffee can that was going to send that daughter to college. He told her he had won that night and walked out and never thought about the other side of the table, not once, for years. He told it flat and plain, without asking her to make it easier, because he understood, finally, that there was no version of it that was not terrible. Imani did not scream at him. She did not throw anything. That was almost worse. She just looked at him for a long moment. This man who had $2 billion and the last of her husband's money somewhere in it, and something moved across her face that was too tired to be hate. "So you came to feel better," she said. "People do that. They find me, they say their piece, and they leave lighter. I'm not a church, Mr. Harris. I don't do confession. I didn't come to feel better." He swallowed. "I came because I'm still doing it. The thing that killed him. I've been doing it for years, and I've got more money than God, and I still can't stop. And 3 nights ago I watched you clean this floor, and I understood for the first time exactly where this road ends." The floor was very quiet. "I don't want your pity for him," she said. "And I don't want your money for me. I told you that already." "I know. That's not what I'm asking." He looked at the notebook, the corner of it showing in her apron pocket, and then he looked back at her face. "I'm asking you to teach me. Whatever it is you know, whatever's in that book you keep. You climbed out of the exact hole I'm standing in, and you did it on $9 an hour, and I could not do it with everything I own. So, I'm not the rich man here. You are, and I'm asking." It was the most honest thing he had said to another human being in 30 years. Imani studied him. She had spent 5 years learning to read the difference between a man who wanted to be saved and a man who just wanted to feel saved, and she was very good at it now. She did not answer him for a long time. Then somewhere across the floor, old Otis came around a corner pushing his cart, saw them and lifted a hand the way he did every night. "Made it to morning," he called. And Imani, watching Leonard's face, watching a billionaire stand in a windowless room asking a cleaning woman to save his life, said the words back the way she always did. "Made it to morning." Then she closed her hand around the notebook in her pocket. She did not take it out. Not yet. But she did not push it down out of sight either. "Come back tomorrow," she said. "Not to the tables, to the supply room, 4 o'clock. If you're 1 minute late, I'll know everything I need to know about you." And she went back to her floor. They met in the supply room at 4 o'clock, on overturned buckets, with the machine humming somewhere on the other side of the wall. And the first thing Imani did was take something away from Leonard that he had carried for 30 years. She took away the word weakness. "You keep saying you can't stop," she said. "Like it's a character flaw. Like if you were just a little stronger, a little smarter, you'd have beat it by now. That's the lie. That's the lie that keeps everybody sitting at those tables. Let me tell you what your money never taught you." And then she told him the thing she had spent 5 years and a stack of library books learning. What killed Cordell was not a lack of willpower. It was an illness, a real one. It has a name, and the name is in the medical books right alongside every other addiction. gambling disorder. Doctors recognize it. They treat it. It does something measurable to the brain, to the same reward circuits that alcohol lights up that drugs light up. The urge is not a decision. It is a hijacking. You can be the strongest man in the room and still lose to it, because it is not a fight your strength was ever built to win. When I finally read that Imani said, sitting in that library with my feet aching, I put the book down and I cried for an hour. Not for me, for him, because for 2 years I had been angry at Cordell for being weak. And it turned out he wasn't weak, he was sick. And nobody, not me, not his doctor, not one single person in his whole life, ever once said the word out loud. We just watched a sick man drown and called him a disappointment. Leonard did not say anything. He was a man who had built his fortune on being the smartest person in every room, and he was learning something on an overturned bucket that all his intelligence had never found. There's a number, Imani said. You can write it down. 1-800-GAMBLER. That's it. It's free. Somebody picks up any hour of the day or night. A person who knows exactly what this is and does not think you are weak for calling. She looked at him. Cordell never called it, never knew it existed. If one person one single time had put that number in his hand, I might still have a husband. She let that sit. You have more than a number, Mr. Harris. You have every resource on earth. Doctors, programs, time, people whose whole job could be helping you stop. You have never once used a single one of them, because using them would mean admitting you have the same thing the poor man across the table had. And your pride would rather kill you than let you be his equal. It landed like a hand on the chest. Because it was true. Leonard had 100 ways to save himself, and had used none of them, and Cordell had none, and would have used any. The only real difference between the man who lived and the man who died was not money. It was who was willing to say the word out loud. So here is the first rule, Imani said. She did not reach for the notebook. She had this one by heart. You are not weak. You are sick. And sick things can be treated. But only after you stop being too proud to be sick. She stood up. Her knees told on her the way they always did. Cordell was a good man, she said quietly, almost to herself. I need you to understand that. He was a good man with a bad illness that nobody caught in time. That's not a villain. That's a tragedy. And the difference between the two is whether anybody was paying attention. Leonard sat on the bucket a long time after she had gone back to the floor. Then he took out his phone. And in the notes in his own hand, a man worth $2 billion wrote down a toll-free number that any broke person in America could have told him for free. And for the first time in 30 years, he did not feel like the richest man in the building. He came back a week later with a plan the way rich men do. He had drawn it up clean. A foundation. His name on it. Money. A lot of money aimed at the problem that had killed Cordell and was still circling him. He laid it out for her in the supply room like a deal, because a deal was the only love language he had ever learned. Imani listened to all of it. Then she said no. Leonard blinked. People did not say no to him. Not like that, she said. You want to write a check and put your name on a building and feel clean. I've seen that kind of help. It helps the giver. It makes the giver feel like a good man. She shook her head. The people I know don't need a monument. They need a Tuesday night class that doesn't cost them anything and doesn't make them feel like a case file. So they built it her way instead. There was a woman named Loretta Sims who ran a small community nonprofit on the South Side, the kind that operates out of a church basement and never has enough of anything. Imani had known her for years. Loretta had the space, the trust of the neighborhood, the reach. What she never had was money. Now she did. They started a program, free. No paperwork that felt like judgment. 2 nights a week in a borrowed room with folding chairs and bad coffee. One night was money. Plain money the way Imani had learned it. Pay yourself first. Build your wall. Know the math they hide from you. Never borrow to chase a loss. The rules from a 99-cent notebook taught by the woman who had written them. The other night was for the thing underneath the money. Gambling recovery. A real counselor Loretta brought in. A circle of chairs where a man could say the word out loud, maybe for the first time in his life, and have nobody in the room think less of him. where somebody would put a number in his hand before it was too late. Imani taught the money night herself. She was terrified the first time. She had spent her whole life being invisible on purpose, and now she was standing in front of a room being seen, being listened to. But she looked out at those folding chairs, and she saw dishwashers, and home health aides, and night cleaners, and rideshare drivers. People the world was built not to see, and she understood that she was the only person who could stand there. Because she was one of them. Because she had lived it. A professor could have taught the same rules, and it would have meant nothing. Imani said, "Pay yourself first," and the whole room leaned in because they knew just by looking at her that she had earned every word the hard way. Leonard paid for all of it and put his name on none of it. That was the part he fought her on. He was used to his name on things. It was how he knew a thing was real. Imani would not budge. "Your name doesn't go on it," she said. "Not because you should be ashamed. Because the second these people see a billionaire's name on the door, they stop believing it's for them. This has to belong to them, not to you." "Then what do I get out of it?" he asked. And he meant it honestly, which was the saddest part. He did not know what a thing was worth if it did not have his name on it. Imani looked at him for a long moment. "You get to stop being the man who won that night," she said. "You don't get to buy that back. But you get to spend the rest of your life on the other side of the table. That's not nothing, Leonard. For a man like you, that might be everything." He was quiet. "Think of it however you need to," she said. "You want it to be charity, be my guest, most rich men do. But that's not what this is." "Then, what is it?" She stood and picked up her mop because the floor was still waiting, because it always was. "It's a correction," she said. "You took something off that table you had no right to. You're not giving it back. You can't. But you can put it where it does some good instead of where it does harm." She looked at him. "Not charity. A correction. There's a difference. Learn it." And Leonard Harris, who had spent his whole life keeping score, finally understood there was a kind of math his companies had never taught him. The healing did not happen all at once. It never does. It happened the way real things happen, slowly in small rooms, one hard conversation at a time. Leonard called his son. Not through an assistant, himself on his own phone on the anniversary of the day he broke it. Vaughn did not pick up the first time, or the second. On the third night he did, and said nothing, just breathed on the line waiting. And Leonard for once did not lead with a solution or a check. He led with the two words he had never once said to his boy in all those years. "I'm sorry. Then I don't expect anything. I just needed you to hear it from me, and not from a lawyer someday." It was not a reunion. It was not a movie. It was a door opened 1 inch after years of being nailed shut. But a door opened 1 inch is a different thing than a wall. Vaughn said, "Okay." Just that. And for Leonard, okay was the richest word he had heard in a decade. Nia came home for a weekend. Imani, terrified in a whole new way, told her daughter the truth. All of it. Where the 4 a.m. shifts had really gone. The account with her name on it. The chip. The floor by table 7. Nia cried, and then she was angry. Not at her mother, but at all the years of distance that had a reason behind it. She was never told. "You should have let me help carry it," Nia said. And Imani realized her daughter had grown into a woman who could. That was its own kind of grief, and its own kind of joy. Deja passed her first month with a wall built. 1 month of rent sitting in an account she did not touch, the payday loan, finally dead and buried. She showed Imani the number on her phone, like a kid showing a report card. Imani did not make a fuss. She just nodded the way you nod at something that matters too much for noise, and said, "Now build the next one." And old Otis kept coming around the corner every night with his cart, kept lifting his hand, kept asking the only question that ever meant anything in that windowless place. Made it to morning, and every night one more of them made it. There was still that page. The one near the back of the notebook. 3 words at the top and below them 5 years of blank. The last rule. Imani had written every other rule the day she understood it. This one she had left empty because she had never understood it. She knew in her head what it was supposed to say. She had just never once been able to believe it in the place where belief actually lives. She sat down at the table with the wobbly leg, one lamp on the same chair where she used to wait up for a man who did not come home. The notebook was open to the empty page. Beside it on the wood sat the chip, folded in half, worn soft, the last thing his hands ever touched. For 5 years she had carried 2 things that weighed the same, the rules that saved her, and the chip that reminded her why she needed saving. She had thought the chip was Cordell. That was the mistake. She picked it up now and turned it in the lamplight and finally understood it was not him at all. It was the illness. It was the thing that wore his face and used his voice and broke his promises. She had been carrying the disease against her heart for 5 years and calling it her husband. Cordell was not the chip. Cordell was the man who cried when Nia was born. Cordell was the chair in the trunk for strangers. Cordell was the porch and the wobbly-legged joke and 12 good years. She did not need a folded chip to hold on to any of that. She had never needed it. She had just been afraid that if she set it down, she would be setting him down too. She was not. So she picked up her pen, and on the last page under the 3 words she had written 5 years ago and never finished, she wrote the rule she had finally learned. The 3 words at the top said, "You are worth," and under them in her own hand she finished it. You are worth saving. Not because of what you can carry for other people, because you are a person. That was always enough. It was enough for him. It was always enough for you. Then she closed the notebook, and the next night she took the folded chip to work one last time, and she knelt by table 7 on the 6 feet of floor she had cleaned 1,000 times, and she left it there, not thrown down, set down, gently, the way you finally lay something to rest. She stood up. Her knees told on her the way they always did, and for the first time in 5 years her pocket was lighter, and so was she. She still cleans floors. That is the part people do not expect, and it is the part that matters most. There was no lottery. No lawyer knocked on her door with a briefcase full of what she was owed. A billionaire did not hand her a new life wrapped in a bow. That is not how it went, and if it had, it would have been a smaller story. Imani kept her job. She wanted it. There was something in the work and the honest weight of a mop in the quiet of a room at 4 in the morning that she was not willing to give up just because she finally had a choice. The difference was that now the 4 a.m. shift was a thing she chose, not a thing that chose her. And 2 nights a week after the floors, she taught. The first class was 7 people. Folding chairs, bad coffee in paper cups, a borrowed room in Loretta's basement with a radiator that knocked. 7 tired people who worked the jobs the world is built not to see sitting in a circle at an hour when they should have been asleep because somebody had finally made a room where they were allowed to be seen. Imani stood up in front of them. Her knees told on her the way they always did, and she was terrified the way she was every time. Then she opened a 99-cent notebook, and she began the only way she knew how. Rule 1, she said, pay yourself first, even if it's $1, and 7 people leaned in. She did not tell them she had a rich man paying the rent on the room. She did not tell them about the chip she had left on a casino floor. She just gave them the rules 1 page at a time, in her own words, the way you hand somebody a rope when you have already climbed out of the same hole yourself. When the class ended, the sky outside the little basement window was starting to turn. Not bright yet, just that first thin gray that means the night did not win. Imani walked out to her car, in it tired all the way down, and she stood for a second and let the cold morning air find her face. Somewhere across town, a billionaire was asleep for the first time in years, without the pull of a table in his chest. 1 day clean, then 2 counting them the way she had taught him to. Somewhere Deja was building her 2nd month. Somewhere a boy named Vaughn had a father who called now. And somewhere in the dark old Otis was pushing his cart toward the end of his shift, toward the gray light toward the door they let you leave by. He would see the sky turning same as her. And if you had been there in that parking lot, in that first gray hour, you would have heard the oldest greeting the night shift has, made it to morning the world, seem to ask her. And Imani Hay, widow, mother, teacher, the woman who cleaned 6 feet of floor, slow, because some things you do not rush, looked up at the light coming and answered it the way she always had, the way she always would, made it to morning. Let me tell you what this story was really about in case the pictures moved too fast to catch it. There were 2 people in it, the world was trained not to see. The first was a woman on her knees, at 4 a.m. cleaning a floor for $9 an hour, holding 4 other lives together with her own 2 hands quietly, without invoice, while important people stepped over the very spot she knelt on and never once looked down. The world has a word for people like Imani. The word is invisible, and we made her that way. Not the casino, not the pit boss, us. Every one of us who has ever looked at a person cleaning up after us and seen a task instead of a life. The second person the world would not see was a man drowning in an illness and calling it a weakness. That was the other thing this story was about, and I need you to hear it plain because somebody watching this needs it tonight. Gambling addiction is not a character flaw. It is not greed. It is not a good man gone bad. It is a recognized disorder. It does real things to the brain, and it kills people who were loved, people who cried when their kids were born, people who kept a chair in the trunk for strangers. We bury them, and we call them disappointments. We should be calling them sick, and we should be catching it sooner. Because here is the truth underneath both of them. The cost of not looking is always paid by somebody. It was paid by Cordell in a parking lot. It was paid by Imani on her knees for 5 years. And the only thing that ever breaks that chain is a single person deciding to actually see another one. So look around your own life for a second. There is someone in it right now who is holding something heavy quietly without asking to be thanked. A parent working a shift you never think about. A friend who always shows up. Somebody keeping 4 other lives together with their own 2 hands and going to bed tired and getting up to do it again. You might know exactly who they are. Or you might have been stepping over them for years. And there is someone else in your life maybe who is drowning in something they are too ashamed to name. Who needs one person to say the word out loud and put a number in their hand before it is too late? You could be the one who looks. You could be the one who sees them. It costs you nothing, and it might be everything to them. If this story made you think of someone, do not just feel it. Send it to them. Let them know they are not as invisible as the world has made them feel. That is worth more than a like. And if you want more stories that make you look twice at the people the world walks past, subscribe. Stay with us. We will see you in the next one. All right, it is just me now. The voice, the writer, whoever you have been listening to for the last little while. I want to be straight with you about a couple of things because you gave me your time and you deserve honesty back. Imani and Leonard and Cordell are not real people. This is a story. I made them up. There was no casino, no table 7, no folded chip. So please do not go looking for them. But I did not make it up out of nothing. I built these people out of things that are absolutely real. Things I have seen. Things maybe you have seen too. I have watched somebody I love get slowly eaten by that exact illness, and I have watched a whole family stand around not knowing what to call it, and I know what it does. And I have walked past more tired people, cleaning up after the rest of us than I could ever count, and I am ashamed of how many of them I never actually looked at. This story was me trying to look. That is the honest reason I wrote it. The one thing in here that is completely real is this.